You want a strong routine, but every time you try to build one, it slips through your hands. You wake up with plans, but the first distraction steals your focus. You promise yourself discipline, but break it at the first excuse. And each time it happens, you feel a little weaker, as if your own word no longer carries weight. Here's the paradox. The harder you try to force routine through motivation, the faster it collapses. Musashi, undefeated in over 60 duels, never relied on motivation. He built a method so firm that even storms could not shake it. His secret was not willpower, it was structure. What if your routine could be unbreakable? Not because you felt strong, but because it became part of who you are. Musashi proved it is possible. He trained daily with such constancy that his practice became his identity. He didn't need reminders, didn't need energy, didn't need approval. He simply walked away. In this path, you'll learn how to stop depending on fleeting moods, how to create rituals that anchor your discipline, and how to build a system that cannot be broken by distraction or fatigue. By the end, you will hold Musashi's method for a routine that endures forever. You've been told that motivation is the fuel for discipline, that if you just feel inspired enough, you'll follow through. But you already know the truth. Motivation never lasts. Some days it burns bright, and you feel unstoppable. Other days it vanishes without warning, and your entire routine collapses. This instability is why relying on motivation keeps you trapped in cycles of starting and quitting. Musashi understood this weakness centuries ago. He did not wait to feel ready before training. He practiced with the same intensity whether his spirit was high or low. To him, discipline was not tied to emotion. It was tied to the way. That's why he never broke his practice, because feelings had no power over his actions. Think about your own experience. How many routines have you abandoned the moment enthusiasm faded? A workout schedule, a study habit, a morning ritual, all destroyed not by lack of ability, but by lack of feeling. When discipline is dependent on motivation, failure is inevitable. Musashi's path removes its fragility. He proved that consistency is not about energy, but about decision. Once you decide, the action is no longer negotiable. You do it whether you want to or not. This is why he repeated the same cut with his sword thousands of times. Not because it was exciting, but because repetition shapes reality. When you stop waiting for motivation, you discover something powerful: freedom. You are no longer chained to moods, to energy levels, to fleeting sparks of inspiration. You act because action itself defines you. That is the foundation of Musashi's method. Every time you try to keep a routine, excuses arrive. Too tired, too busy, not today, and you believe them because they feel real. Musashi dismantled this weakness by turning his practices into rituals. A ritual is not optional. It is not debated. It is performed because it belongs to the structure of your life, not the mood of your day. This is why he could train with absolute consistency. He didn't wonder whether practice. He practiced because that was his way of being. His mind was free from negotiation. You know this experience in small ways: brushing your teeth, locking your door. You don't ask yourself whether to do it. You just do. Musashi expanded that simplicity into every part of his training. To build rituals, start small but firm. Choose one action that anchors your discipline. Something clear and measurable. Maybe it's 5 minutes of silence in the morning or a set of exercises before sleep. The size doesn't matter. What matters is that it becomes non-negotiable. The moment you remove choice, you remove weakness. The strength of rituals is not intensity, but permanence. Anyone can force a hard day of effort. Few can build a chain of unbroken days. Musashi proved that victory comes not from one great performance, but from endless repetition. That's why his method outlasted motivation, fatigue, and even fear. Every excuse loses its power when it collides with ritual. Tired? The ritual remains. Busy? The ritual remains. Unmotivated? The ritual remains. This is how the samurai built routines that no storm could break. Not by fighting excuses, but by making them irrelevant. Musashi once declared, 1,000 days of training to forge, 10,000 days to polish. This was not exaggeration. It was a command. He was teaching that identity is carved by years of repetition, not by short bursts of effort. Discipline becomes unshakable only when the mind has been trained for so long that breaking the routine feels unnatural. You can already see the trap of modern thinking. People want 30-day challenges, instant results, quick transformations. They want a new self in weeks, but abandon the practice when the glow of novelty fades. Musashi would see this as weakness. To him, nothing was real until it had survived 1,000 days of unbroken discipline. Imagine what this means. 3 years of steady practice. No matter the weather, no matter the mood, no matter the excuses, the act repeats itself. At first it feels forced, heavy, almost unbearable. But then something shifts. What once felt like struggle becomes your natural state. The discipline is no longer something you do. It is who you are. This is why Musashi could enter a duel with perfect calm. His sword was not guided by thought, but by identity. He had repeated his strikes so often that they became instinct. Likewise, his daily training was not powered by desire, but by the permanence of habit. That permanence is what you must seek. The 1,000-day principle is brutal, but it is also liberating. It removes the illusion of shortcuts and replaces it with certainty. If you persist for long enough, you will transform. Not by chance, not by luck, but by inevitability. The 1,000 days are the threshold between trying and becoming. Musashi often withdrew into caves, not to hide from the world, but to sharpen his mind through silence. He understood what most people fear. When the noise fades, you are left alone with your thoughts, and many cannot endure themselves. That's why they seek constant distraction, music, notifications, endless chatter, anything to avoid the truth waiting in quiet. But Musashi discovered silence was not emptiness. It was a forge. In the absence of noise, the mind first resists, then reveals. Doubts rise, fears surface, hidden desires appear. This confrontation feels unbearable at first, but it is the only way to strip weakness from your spirit. When you remain in silence, you stop running and you begin to master yourself. Modern life has turned silence into an enemy. You check your phone every few minutes, fill the air with sound, and escape stillness as if it were danger. Yet the danger is not silence. It is your inability to sit with it. Musashi proved that the warrior who can master silence can master anything, because he no longer fears being alone with his own mind. This is not about meditation as a hobby. It is about discipline as survival. 5 minutes of true silence daily, without escape, becomes a battlefield. The more you face it, the stronger you become. Silence hardens a mind against distraction, because once you can endure yourself, no external noise can enslave you. Musashi's victories were not won only with a blade, but with the stillness that guided it. His clarity came from silence. His focus came from solitude. If you wish to build a routine that cannot be broken, you must make silence your training ground. For in silence, excuses die and discipline is born. Musashi wrote, "In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close, and to take a distance view of close things." At first glance, it sounds poetic. In reality, it is a method for building unbreakable discipline. Most people fail because they see only one perspective, either the burden of the present moment or the dream of the future. Musashi mastered both. Think of your routine. You quit when the day feels heavy because you forget the vision of what it builds, or you fantasize about the future, but fail to act today. Both are errors. To see far and near is to act with precision now, while never losing sight of the horizon. That dual vision protects you from extremes of despair and delusion. Musashi trained this by repetition. Every cut of the sword was immediate, executed with total presence. Yet every sequence was also part of decades of practice leading toward mastery. He never confused the strike with the path, nor the path with the strike. Both mattered equally. You can apply this to your life. When you sit to work, focus only on the act before you, one page, one set, one step. That is your near vision, but also hold the far vision, the years of growth that each act builds. When you see both, fatigue loses its power. The effort today gains meaning, and the dream of tomorrow gains structure. This balance is what most lack. They drown in the details and lose hope, or they live only in the dream and never act. Musashi's way prevents both errors. When you see far and near, your routine is shielded from collapse. You know why you act today, and you know where it leads tomorrow. Musashi wrote, "Respect the gods and Buddhas without counting on their help." Many misunderstand this line, thinking it rejects faith. But Musashi was pointing to something deeper, the danger of dependence. Respect allows you to learn, but dependence enslaves you. A routine that depends on others, mentors, systems, tools, is fragile. He visited temples, studied from masters, and learned widely, but he never chained himself to any single doctrine. He took what strengthened him and left the rest behind. This independence made him adaptable. He could train anywhere with anyone or alone without losing his way. You must apply the same principle. Respect knowledge, respect guidance, but never make your discipline conditional on them. The moment your routine needs a perfect system, the perfect coach, or the perfect environment, it is already broken. Life will remove those supports, and without them you collapse. Instead, build routines that stand with or without external help. Practice in noise and in silence, in comfort and in discomfort. Use teachers as inspiration, not as crutches. Learn from systems, but be ready to move forward when they fail. Respect without dependence is true strength. Musashi's path reminds you that your foundation must be unshakable from within. External structures are tools, not anchors. When you remove dependence, you eliminate excuses. Your discipline no longer waits for perfect conditions. It becomes alive in any circumstance. Musashi's early career is filled with duels where he never used the same weapon twice. Sword, spear, wooden stick, even bare hands. He fought with whatever was available. Why? To prove to himself that his discipline was not tied to tools but to his adaptability. He knew that rigidity breaks, but flexibility endures. This principle applies directly to your routine. If it survives only when conditions are perfect, it is fragile. A true samurai adapts. If you cannot train at dawn, you train at noon. If you cannot work in silence, you work in noise. If one door closes, you flow through another. The essence is preserved even when the form changes. Modern life is filled with rigidity, disguised as discipline. People design perfect schedules, but the first disruption destroys everything. Musashi would laugh at such weakness. He built a discipline that could survive storms, interruptions, and chaos. That is why it lasted decades. To cultivate this, deliberately vary your environment, work in different places, train in different conditions, practice your discipline when life is inconvenient. At first it feels uncomfortable, but it forges resilience. Soon, no condition can stop you because your adaptability has become part of your strength. Adaptation is not compromise. It is strategic flexibility. The path remains the same, but the form bends reality. This is how you avoid collapse. This is how your routine becomes indestructible. Even Musashi, with all his mastery, admitted weakness. He never claimed to be perfect. His greatest lesson was this: never stray from the way. But when he did stray, he returned immediately. That is the return protocol. The ability to fall without quitting, to stumble without abandoning the path. Most people fail not because they break once, but because they never return. One missed day becomes 1 week. 1 week becomes 1 month, and the routine is lost forever. Musashi's wisdom was simple. Do not wait. The very moment you fall, return. No guilt, no excuses, no delay. This protocol is what keeps a routine alive for decades. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about persistence. The warrior's power is not in never failing, but in always returning. Each return strengthens a chain, making it harder to break next time. In your own life, you will fail. You will miss a practice, skip a step, lose focus. Do not dramatize it. Do not tell yourself stories of weakness. Simply return. Pick up the blade, the pen, the habit. Continue as if you never left. That is the samurai's way. When you master the return protocol, your routine cannot be destroyed. Failure becomes temporary. Weakness becomes fuel, and every fall becomes another chance to prove your resilience. And know why in battle, but in eating, walking, even breathing. His vigilance in ordinary acts prepared him for extraordinary challenges. To him, nothing was too small to deserve discipline. Most people dismiss the small things as irrelevant. They think skipping little details doesn't matter, but it does. Every careless act weakens the chain of discipline. If you are sloppy with the small, you will collapse when the big arrives. Vigilance in the details is a shield that prevents larger failures. You must practice presence in daily routines. Wash a dish with the same care you would wield a sword. Sit in silence with the same focus you would face an opponent. Treat every act as training. When you do this, your discipline becomes seamless, not something you turn on and off, but something constant. The beauty of this vigilance is that it multiplies strength without adding burden. You're already living these moments, eating, walking, working. By filling them with awareness, you turn life itself into practice. This is how Musashi became a warrior in every breath, not just in battle. When you master vigilance in small things, you eliminate weakness at its root. The mind becomes alert, the body becomes disciplined, and your routine becomes indestructible. Musashi never sought an endpoint. Even after 60 victories and decades of mastery, he declared, "I have not yet reached the way." This statement is the essence of eternal practice. Most people destroy their routines because they treat them like temporary bridges. They believe discipline will one day free them from the need for discipline. That illusion is what breaks them. The samurai knew better. Discipline is not a stage to pass through. It is the path itself. There is no graduation, no finish line. The way continues, and the warrior continues with it. That's why Musashi painted, wrote poetry, and practiced calligraphy. These were not hobbies. They were reminders that the way exists in every act, forever. To apply this truth, you must stop asking, "When will this get easier?" It won't. Life doesn't become lighter. You become stronger. The practice never ends, but your relationship with it transforms. What begins as effort becomes identity, and what begins as struggle becomes nature. This is why true routines cannot be broken. They are no longer separate from who you are. You don't perform them to achieve something else. You perform them because they define you. The act itself is a reward. The routine itself is a victory. Musashi's method forces you to abandon the fantasy of an easier life. Instead, it gives you the reality of an indestructible self. That is the secret of eternal practice. You stop chasing freedom from discipline and find freedom inside discipline. You began this journey believing your routine was fragile because you lacked motivation. But now you see the truth. Motivation was never the answer. Rituals, adaptability, silence, vigilance, and eternal practice. These are the pillars Musashi used to build a life unshaken by storms. These are the same pillars you can use to make your discipline indestructible. The reward is not only consistency, but transformation. You'll stop starting over. Stop breaking promises to yourself. Stop feeling weak every time distraction wins. Instead, you will carry a mind that holds steady through chaos. You will discover strength not as something you borrow, but as something you are. And because you stayed until the end, here is Musashi's bonus teaching. Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. He meant that true discipline is not about what others witness. It is about the invisible strength you cultivate within. No one may see the hours of silence, the repetitions, the small rituals, but those unseen acts are the foundation of the unbreakable self. Take this with you. The strongest victories are the invisible ones. The discipline you live when no one is watching, the promises you keep only to yourself, the quiet strength you forge daily. That is the real power Musashi left behind. Now, the question is not whether you will be disciplined tomorrow. The question is whether you will walk the way today. The path is here, eternal, waiting. It does not need perfection. It needs only your return.